Greetings. Welcome back to the tent. And we're just going to fingers crossed and pray that this recording actually finally works. I have tried to record this 10 times, having mass technical issues. And when you are a one-woman show running a podcast with no technical background, it can be really fun and interesting. So anyway, we're going to hope this works. And if it's not perfect, we're cool with that. We have a solo episode today on body image stuff, so we'll get into that content shortly. I do want to preface that in no way am I an expert in anything food related, nutrition related, eating disorder related. I can simply only share my story, and sometimes I shy away from talking about this kind of stuff because I do live in a very traditionally acceptable body type for this society, which I hate, but that is sadly still the fact. We're still doing a lot of work to unwire that mentality about bodies. And I also am not a professional, so I can't really give anything other than my story, nor can I give anyone else advice about theirs. So the point of this is really just to share my thoughts and how I feel and how some of these things came to light and to play in my life. And I just want to make sure that everyone listening also protects their own heart if they're not in a space to be listening about this kind of stuff, to sit this episode out. So we're going to get into the content. We're going to get right into it and really hope that the tech is in my favor today. Hi, hello, hey. And welcome to my tent, a place to hear life experiences, different opinions, a range of journeys, and a viewpoint different than our own. A place to challenge our own thoughts, a space to learn a little bit, and I promise some fun along the way. I believe we're better when we let a range of people into our tents, so welcome to mine. Still going to be releasing episodes during these kind of crazy weeks. I will have a couple bye weeks in July just because we are running into the 4th of July, and I know that a lot of people will be traveling and I need some time off, rightly so. So we'll have a couple bye weeks in there, but I will make sure to keep everyone posted on when those will be and when episodes will resume. All right. Now we can get into the meat of this episode, and it's going to be talking about my relationship with my body and body image and some of the struggles that I have went through. It's hard for me to talk about this sometimes because I don't want it to come off as off-putting because I have never been criticized for my size. I have always lived in a body that is acceptable by society's standards. I have never experienced walking into a store and them not having my size. So sometimes I feel like I don't have the right to be talking about this, which I know is not true because my story is mine. It's the only one I know, and there is value in listening to these opinions. But it is kind of a struggle for me to talk about. And this is the first time I will really be diving into and opening up about a lot of this. I really haven't even spoken about this on my socials. So this will be the first time I'm actually airing out loud some of these things to people outside of my close circle. To take a step back, I'm going to try to walk through where some of my thoughts and opinions and body image came from, stemming all the way from childhood. And a lot of it was subconscious. I grew up in the era of ultra thin models on the cover of every single magazine, the next fad diet being plastered all over the TV and different types of content, and thinness being celebrated. So those images were all around me and thrown in my face, as it was to a lot of us that grew up in that time, that the size of your body dictated your worth. So those messages are coming in. It was never coming from my parents. Those things were not pushed on us. We were always taught to fuel our bodies and to eat. My parents did a good job of offering different types of foods, explaining that different foods will give you different things. They do different things in your body. We were offered desserts. Foods weren't off limits. So they did a good job of helping us understand that food is food. And even with that, some things came into play from external factors. I started dancing at a very young age, at 2.5, 3 years old, and was dancing in a very high capacity all the way through high school. I remember for the first time looking at my body and having some concerns when I was 8 or 9 years old. I was getting fitted for a recital costume. And I remember the woman that was measuring me putting the measuring tape around my waist and saying, "So you'll need a different size. You'll need a bigger size than her," talking to the person that was putting through the order forms. And I remember thinking, is that bad? Why did she have to mention it like that? Why couldn't she just say she needs a size X? And I was looking at myself in the reflection of this mirror, starting to look at my body in a different way. And it was this very core memory of mine of, for the first time, thinking, is my body bad? Continuing to dance was also very highly focused on your body and what your body was doing and what your body looked like. Not even just what your body looked like for clothing size, but the position of your body and your hands and how your legs looked and if they were in the right position. It was a highly scrutinized sport, I guess we'll call it sport, to be involved in, because you are constantly being looked at and you are constantly being criticized. And you're constantly with all of these other people whose bodies may be looking different than yours. And you're looking at them and thinking, oh, they look better than I do doing this move, or they look better than I do in this costume. So I don't regret being a dancer. I did love dancing for many, many years. I have very fond memories of those years of my life, but I can 100% see how that started to contribute to some of the things that really came out later in life. I will say I also grew up in a town, we're going to call a spade, that was very privileged and wealthy, where beauty was put on a very high pedestal. Everybody seemed to be beautiful. Everyone had the most up-to-date clothes and access to blowouts and facials and Botox. And it was really hard to find someone growing up that didn't look quote unquote perfect. I loved where I grew up. I am so fortunate to have lived there. We had access to New York City and great education, but the aesthetics of this town were definitely something that were very emphasized. When I got to high school, I became a cheerleader, and this was another core memory of mine of where some of my thoughts about my body were amplified. I have always been a denser, more muscular woman. And now I see that as a superpower. But growing up, I really resisted that, especially in cheerleading, where you are quite literally put into a pyramid based on your size. And I started to make these connections of the people on the bottom of the pyramid are less valuable because they're too big to be the girls that are flying, and the girls that are on the top, because those girls are the petite and the cute and the small ones. Whether no one was saying that outright, but it sort of is a great metaphor of this pyramid structure where if you're on the bottom, that's the people that aren't seen. They're trying to hide them. In my thoughts, I was thinking they're trying to hide them. And I hated being a base. I hated being on the bottom of the pyramid. Right after my sophomore year, I started to really struggle with my body. keep in mind, I still was not a big person. I have always been a smaller girl with the ability to easily maintain the body that I have. But I started to think of my body in terms of what I was consuming and what I was eating. And this is where the restriction of foods started to come into play, where I have deemed in my head foods good or bad. I have approved certain foods to be safe. I would try to not eat carbs. I demonized bagels, which I now look back as a very sad time in my life because I love bagels. And I started to restrict what I was eating. Now, being in high school and young and running around like a crazy person between sports and school, I started to lose weight fairly quickly. And what ended up happening, which I'm not surprised by, but is something that fueled the fire, is people started praising me. I have never gotten more praise in my entire life than I did when I lost weight in high school. Strangers in high school coming up to me. Oh my gosh, you're so skinny. You look so good. Cheerleading. I started to get put on the top of the pyramid. In class, people saying, oh my gosh, you look great. And they did not know that mentally I was struggling. And all I was thinking about all day was my body and my food. And how can I continue to live in this world where I have this control over what I'm eating? And that's what it was. It was control. I wanted control over what felt uncontrollable. And to me, that was having oversight of the things that I could, my food, my exercise, what I was doing. And I hovered in this place where I wasn't necessarily super sick into an eating disorder where I would need an inpatient treatment, but I had lost enough that it was all consuming and concerning. But I sort of rode this middle ground where I wasn't physically suffering. I still had enough weight and muscle on me that my body wasn't physically failing, but mentally is where I was really, really struggling. I think as I got older, I realized just how much that has actually crept into the rest of my life and how long it has taken me to undo some of this mentality that I had around food and my body, that small was better because that's what I got praised for. That control over my food meant I was strong. And it really crept in pretty much until the last few years. And we'll get there. But to continue this story of how my body has evolved, I went to college and ricocheted the other way. And I don't know if this is because I was in a new place and I was finally able to give up some control, if it was just harder for me to be able to access the exercise and the this and the that. It was also a new experience where I was going to parties and I wanted to have fun, but I went the other direction where I almost let my health actually start failing because I dropped all exercise. I was living off Bud Light and cheesy grits. I was baking in the sun every day, which I now heavily regret. So I was super tan, but my focus just became on having fun. And I kind of then embraced this party girl mentality where I almost felt like encouraged by the girl that was hanging out and drinking the Bud Light and not caring. But what ended up happening is I was then in this cycle of also being equally as unhealthy on the other side because I had completely ricocheted the other direction and was riding this train of just mistreating myself and my body and what I was putting in it. And there was no equilibrium between the two. And it seems really drastic because it was, because I was in this ultra control restrict. And then I went to this complete opposite end of the spectrum where I just wasn't giving a flying F about what was going on. And I did that for most of college. We finally started to find the middle ground when I graduated from college. And I will say started to, because that's where another piece of this puzzle comes into play. Because when I graduated from college, I was living in New York City and I was so broke. I made no money, but I needed a stress release because now I'm a corporate working person and I'm not going out as much because I'm waking up for work and I'm doing these things. So I started to run outside because it's free and it felt good and it was an endorphin release. And I brought the exercise piece back to my life, which is a good thing. But then I went full blown into the exercise piece of this, where I didn't just start running. I started running half marathons. I started running marathons. I started really focusing on the workouts that made me sweaty and left me gassed. And I felt like I was about to collapse after. And I started riding this ground of, okay, exercise is now the thing that brings me my self-worth. Yes, of course, it's doing good things for my body. But at the level that I was doing it, it actually wasn't. My joints were screaming. My cortisol was constantly on the up and up. I was pushing my limits over and over because that was now my thing that I connected to my body image and I connected to my control. This is also the time that I started wearing a fitness watch. And I don't mean to demonize these because not everyone has the same journey as I do with the different stages of my life that I've been in and some of my overindulgence in different areas. But I will say that my wearable did nothing super positive for me at first. It was tracking every step I took. It was tracking my workouts. It was telling me how many calories I burned. And I got hits of endorphin when I would see at the end of the day that I closed my rings or that my workout was better than it was last week, or I could visually see the calories that I was burning. I was putting all of my self-worth into a tiny little watch on my wrist that PS, the margin of error on those things is decently high. It's like 25%. I was putting all of my worth into my wristwatch and it telling me what a good day I had. It telling me if I was deserving of that dessert. The watch telling me that workout was worth it. With that, I had to then take a look at what I was doing with exercise and how I was viewing exercise. And over the past, I would say 5 years has really been a focus for me to find a ground that's sustainable, not in the super restrictive control aspect, not in the don't give a fuck about my health and wellness aspect, not in the over exercising aspect, but what can I be doing to finally get to a place where I feel good? I was over my own bullshit, honestly. And I just got to a point where I said, none of this has been sustainable. Nothing that I have been doing for many years is something that I can keep up long term. I need to get a handle on this. And it was a huge level of conversation in therapy for me and personal growth and development for me. And there's a couple things over the past few years in particular that have been very helpful. One of the most important things I think I did for myself over the past couple years is get certified in different types of exercise. My 200-hour yoga cert and my NASM personal training certification. Because in those courses, I was actually learning what the body does and how different things impact your body and muscles, how they attach and how muscle growth happens. And it was so eye-opening for me to be able to learn all this. And I am forever grateful that I was able to translate that into teaching fitness and empowering others to do things for their bodies and the why behind it. The why was huge for me in understanding what was going on in my own body. Surprisingly, IVF and pregnancy were a positive factor for me. because this was a time in my life I actually had to give up a lot of control because of physically how I was feeling. So during IVF, there's a lot of periods where, first off, you feel like crap, so you're not really wanting to do much. But I was starting to lean into other things that made me feel good. Meditation, light walks, stretching, cooking, doing things that contribute to my overall health, that had nothing to do with trying to get the sweatiest workout or trying to be the best version of myself. I was just simply trying to survive. And I started to realize, oh, wow, some of these things really make me feel good. That short walk around the neighborhood, it was 10 minutes, but I feel really good after that. Pregnancy was also a huge aspect to my body acceptance, not only in the fact that I was physically limited, because at a certain point in pregnancy, I was just too big to want to do anything and too uncomfortable, but also this fascinating thing came back up again, like I had in high school, where the amount of praise I got was wildly off the charts when I was struggling the most. And it came up again in pregnancy, where I've never had more people feel the need to comment on my body, my pregnant body. It's almost as if a woman gets pregnant and the floodgates open and there's a sign on you that says, I'm pregnant, comment on it. It is very bizarre. And if you have been here before, I have talked to many people that also found that this was a thing for them, where no one would ever comment on my body prior to pregnancy like they did while I was growing a human being. What I witnessed was a lot of people being judgmental. I'll never forget, I went to a conference when I was 30 weeks pregnant, and this was the first time I was around a lot of people at scale. And the commentary, mostly on people telling me, your bump's too small. Is your baby okay? Is your baby growth restricted? Asking questions on the size of my body, asking if I'm okay, asking me if everything's on track. And I started to get in my own head. Am I not doing the right thing? Is my body not okay? Is my baby not okay? I finally got to a point where I just couldn't care anymore because I was tired and uncomfortable. And I started to tune out the noise and really lean into the trust I had in myself and my doctors. Not to mention, I ended up having an 8.5-pound baby. I carry small, but even I don't even really think I was that small. I had a nice big round belly at the end. I got pictures to prove it. But yeah, I won't say that I got exponentially bigger, but it wasn't like I was 30 weeks pregnant and had zero bump. But regardless, people just like to make their commentary. And the postpartum journey was, again, something that really pushed me into evaluating my relationship with myself and my body in a very positive way. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that I had no fears going into pregnancy and postpartum. Given my history and the thoughts that I'd had on my body, even with the amount of work that I had put in to get to a place where I loved my body and I was proud of it and I was doing things that made it feel good. Even then, I still had a lot of fears about my body changing. And I don't think it's wrong of me to say that. It's a first pregnancy. I did not know how it was going to go. I didn't know how I was physically going to feel or look. But I actually found it really helped push me to this place I'm in now, where I can look at myself and say, holy shit, I grew a person, an entire human being with arms and legs and eyes and a brain, and ejected him from my body. And then my body healed and it put the stitches back together, and it is now a very new body, but it is a badass body. Of course, there are days that are harder than others. I'm a human being, but where I am now is light years different than where I was even 3 or 4 years ago, where I'm embracing this new skin. I will say that my recovery experience was very smooth, and I did level out back to a body that looks similar to where I was pre-pregnancy. So that's genetics, mostly. I also am someone that likes to exercise and eat well, yes. But at the end of the day, a lot of that's going to be genetics based. And I also really struggle talking about postpartum body image because some people have told me that I went back to my normal self, so I really have nothing to quote unquote complain about. And it's not complaining. My body is different, whether or not people can see that outwardly, because I did go back to a state that looks similar to where I was pre-preg. I am not the same person. My rib cage has expanded. I had to buy all new bras, dresses that were tight in the rib cage pre-pregnancy. Bye-bye. We got rid of those. My hips have expanded a bit. My butt has flattened so much. And I do want to say something because this is also fascinating. The grass isn't always greener because growing up, I hated my butt, or I thought I hated my butt. I had a booty. People always commented on it that I got junk in the trunk. I don't know what happened to it postpartum. I swear I woke up one day and it was flat as a board. And guess what? I miss my booty. I miss my ass. So what I thought I hated, I actually miss. So it's just proof that so much of this is in our heads and it's narratives that we're telling ourselves. But that's a side tangent. Anyway, my body is different. But what I get to look out now within myself is I did something incredible. I look at my son and realize he was made inside this body of mine that for years I was at war with. And how incredible is it that I got the opportunity to do that? Exercise has always been a big part of my life. And I am in a place now, I really have relied heavily on feeling versus anything. I'm not going to say it didn't take a lot of work to deconstruct my own mindset that the sweatier, the better, the calorie burn, the better, and really starting to work in some low impact stuff. But pregnancy and postpartum were the two things that made me realize I love low impact. My body responds to it so positively. And it was just something that I ignored for so long because I had convinced myself that running marathons was the best way to be fit. And from about 30 weeks on in pregnancy, I was just going on long ass walks. And I look back at that time in my pregnancy with such fondness because I was able to slow down. And then postpartum, I took my son on walks every single day. It was summer. It was beautiful. We stopped and we sat and I just got to spend that time with him. And I found that my endorphin boost post walks or post yoga or post stretching, low impact, anything felt the same, if not better, than after I completed a high intensity workout. Not to mention, I run anxious. I think everyone probably knows that at this point. But my cortisol is always on high alert. When I was pushing myself to the brink constantly, I don't even want to know what that was doing for my cortisol. I feel like I have finally found a way to embrace workouts that actually bring that down to more of a homeostasis and putting value in the fact that my mental health feels so much better when I do these types of workouts that, sure, I'm not ending up drenched in sweat and unable to walk for 2 days, but I am treating my body with the respect that it deserves, and I am giving my body something that makes it feel so good. And the craziest part is I have physically responded very well to Pilates, yoga, walks, weight training. I have seen my body shift and get stronger from these things that I had previously deemed not worthy of my time because I wasn't left dead in a ditch after exercising. I also just don't have the time anymore to be dedicating to things like that because I have a child and a job and you get the point. But I now am finally in a place where I feel like I live life for life. And if workout fits into that day, fantastic. I wear a watch occasionally, more so when my sleep starts to get kind of crazy and trying to figure out throughout a day if there's certain things that are affecting my sleep. But that's pretty much all I wear a watch for, a device for. I don't track my workouts. I don't own a scale, which has been a huge thing for me over the past few years. I couldn't even tell you how much I weigh because I don't know and I don't care to know because that number isn't my worth. That number is not what dictates the value I have as a person, nor does a wristwatch that tells me I burned X amount of calories. Removing the external factors was huge, and it's not easy. And if anyone is in a position where they're trying to get rid of a scale or get rid of a wearable tracker, try it for 2 days and then put it back on and keep going. Take it off for a workout. Challenge yourself, knowing that small steps equal big changes. For me, I actually had to go cold turkey. That's just who I am as a human. And just go all out and take it off and put it in a drawer and let it die and not touch it for a year. That was how I had to do it. But I do know a lot of other people who have had success of, all right, I'm going to go on a run and leave this thing at home. And I'll have no idea how far I went, how many calories I burned, how many steps I took. Just start to feel how liberating that is. When you tap back into your feeling and leave out the external factors, what that does for you to get back into your body. We have gotten so far away from listening to ourselves. Instead of looking down and saying, oh, my heart rate's X, Y, and Z. How do you feel your heart rate is? Do you feel your heart pounding in your body? Do you feel like your heart rate is too high, too low? You could push, you need to pull back. We need to listen to ourselves a little bit more. And that's been a huge empowering factor for me between throwing away my scale and really ditching fitness trackers. This was a lot, and I feel like it was very jumbled, but that is the whole wild ride that I have been on. And I don't want anyone to leave this podcast thinking I have a great day every day. I see pictures of myself sometimes that I'm like, I don't love that. Or I have days I wake up and I don't feel my best. But overall, I am very happy to be in the place I am now. I am glad I have done the work to make my lifestyle fit in a sustainable, realistic, workable manner. I have gotten a lot of brain space back of constantly worrying about what I am putting in my mouth, how much I am exercising, all of the things, to be able to focus on stuff that I actually want to focus on. This was just my story. If you're in a similar place, I think reaching out to professional help is always a good idea. Therapists have been a huge part of my healing process through all of this, or just confiding in people that you know won't be judgmental. I think we can get ourselves into a spot, like I have heard a lot of times before when I do open up about this on Instagram, that I don't deserve to have feelings because I am thin. So find your people. And I hope this was maybe helpful for anyone that is listening. And I think all of you are beautiful, wonderful humans. Love ya. Thank you for tuning in to the Welcome to My 10 podcast. I hope you had as much fun listening as I do recording. I am so happy to have you here, and see you next episode.